Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts. Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
Woo! Thank you. Woo! Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, it's so good to be back here. First of all, I have to thank Reverend Jean Marie for allowing me to speak. This is the first time I'm speaking at Unity of Houston. Yeah? So I'm going to move to the floor because I feel like I'm far away. Can you still see me? So just really grateful to be here, grateful to be on the planet at this time. Grateful to be where I am, uncomfortable as it is at times. I was born and raised in the South in a small community called Lake Providence. It was founded in 1868 by a missionary. And so by the time I got there, this small community had burgeoned into a really cool place where there was a lot of dairy farmers, a lot of people who grew their own gardens, sustainable. So I'm the baby, right? And by the time I come along, I get to stay with Granny while my brother and my sister go to school. They're both over a decade older than I am, and my parents go to work. And so my grandmother, who was born in 1901, used to share with me these stories about growing up in the South. So fast forward from that time to this past year. When I saw you in February, I had just started working in the public school system in Nashville, Tennessee. Don't ask me how I got there. My plan was to leave Los Angeles, drive all the way back to New York City, land another show on Broadway, and continue moving it along. And I stopped in Nashville. They were selling the house that my parents lived in. The house that was right next to the parcel of land that my father grew up on. That parcel of land was the house where my grandmother lived. So it had so much meaning for me to stop there. I had written this curriculum on social and emotional learning and literacy, and I thought, okay, well, I have a couple of friends. We go out, we talk, and they said, well, Charles, what are you doing now? I said, well, I wrote this manual, if you will. It's a curriculum. It's on emotional literacy and learning, and I want to teach youth the virtues of the emotional body, because if they don't learn, there's another winding path that they can take. I had to learn, and I'm glad my grandmother was there. But I realize now we don't have those types of communities anymore. So I thought, okay, God, what is it mine to do? So I go to Nashville, and they said, okay, I got the place for you and the person that you need to call. I said, oh, okay, very good. So he calls the principal of this school. I go in the next week, have an interview with him, tell him what I'm doing. Within 10 minutes, he says, you're hired. He says, I have the group just for you. I said, oh, you do? He said, yeah, let me take you to them. So he takes me to this room, and I walk into the room, and there are about 14 or 15 third and fourth grade boys running around the room. And so the principal says, hey guys, I have someone I want to introduce you to. They don't hear him. They're having too much fun, and as they whiz past me, I'm trying to gather my footing. And all I can remember saying was, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm supposed to be. And in that moment, a fourth grader, he comes up to me and he says, "Hey, what's your name?" And he grabs my shirt like this. And in that moment, my life goes back in time. You see, I grew up, I was the baby, yes. I got what I wanted with a big smile and a please. There was this one person who I could never get past, though, and that was my daddy. My father was born in 1925. It was old school. By the time I came along, he was in his mid-40s. So he'd had a life of learning himself. A man of order he was, strict and emotionally vacant. I, on the other hand, was the opposite. I came to the planet fully self-expressed. You know, in the South, they have a saying, children are seen and not heard. That wasn't for me. I'd walk up to anybody, "Hey, my name is Charles, what is yours?" And my father would pull me to the side and say, "Little boys don't go around talking to people out of turn. Nobody spoke to you. Be quiet." But you know, as children, there's something that always lives inside of us. It's called who we are. And so next person I'd see, "Hey, Miss So-and-so, where you going?" "I'm going to see my grandmother today." Pull me to the side. "Haven't I told you?" I also knew love. Love was everywhere. And I showed it, I demonstrated. I would hug anybody. "I love you too." It was something about the way that I was demonstrating that kind of caused my father to pause. This one, he's hard-headed. He doesn't listen. He talks too much, touches people. I'd run up to my father and grab his pant leg. "Daddy, will you come out and play ball with me?" "No." He'd whisk my hand away. And I tried for years. And I think at the age of 8, I finally got it. I said, "Oh, I know what's wrong with me. I need to fix it before anyone else notices." So such my life continues on. And the sensitive child, the one who knew intuition just like that, suddenly becomes reclusive. How can I fit in, I say, because my father says I don't, and he's the authority. So I'll play football, I'll play sports, I'll pretend to be tough, I'll pretend to be insensitive. And I did. I did it to the best of my ability. And at every corner, I would say to myself, I wonder if I could just get one more chance at him. "Daddy, will you come and watch me play football tonight?" "I don't have time. I got something else to do." And when I was 13 years old, I said, "Okay, cutting it all off. I'm cutting him off. It's too painful," but I didn't know what to call it. All I could say was, I don't want to be around him. If anybody asked me, "How's your dad?" "I don't know." "How are you doing?" That wasn't the 5-year-old. That wasn't that 4th grader. But I had chosen to pull back. It followed me into college. I graduated college. I got a job with IBM. And I thought, this will do it. I knew my mother and my grandmother would champion me. But I wanted my father to say, I'm proud of you. And I went home. I was living in Memphis at the time. And I went home and I said, Daddy, guess what? And my father always answered in the same dry tone. Mm-hmm, he says. I said, I just got a job with IBM. I'm making good money. Got my own apartment. I just bought a car, too. And I didn't say, I hope you're proud of me, but I sure wanted him to say, son, I'm proud of you. And he didn't. And I was on my way back to Memphis. I was heartbroken, and I saw this banner on the side of the street. It was a billboard, and it said, Jesus cares for you. And I pulled to the side, and I said, I don't care if Jesus cares for me. I want my daddy to care for me. I could not unload this. I couldn't let it go. It was too deep, and I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to give voice to it. As smart as I was, I could not talk about my emotions to anybody because it made me that small thing that I had spent so many years to rise above. I got fired from corporate America. Started singing in jazz clubs. My grandmother was a self-taught pianist. She's the one who taught me how to sing. And I said, at last, I need some happiness in my life, and the only place I can find it is in music. And so I started to go to these jazz clubs, and I would sing, God Bless the Child, Everything Must Change. And someone walks up to me, and he says, when you sing, the room changes. And I said, oh, that's interesting. When I would listen to my grandmother as a small child, something would happen, but I wouldn't be able to articulate it. But I knew something would happen because I would see it happen to her, and I would feel it happen to me. He said, have you ever thought about musical theater? I gasped. Musical theater? I'm a football player. We don't do musical theater, no. And then I stopped, and I said, what is musical theater? He said, you write a script, you sing, and you dance on stage. I was always a ham. I came here a ham. Look at me. What's your name? My name. I said, okay, I'll try it. So I started going to these auditions, and I booked everything. Everything, because it brought me back to who I originally came here as. It was natural for me to pick up a script and read it and have conversation with someone else on the stage. Who are you? This is me. Let's do this. Let's sing this. But I couldn't put it all together. And then I got the thought, I'm going to move to New York. I got a break in Atlanta before I moved to New York, and that gave me impulse to go to New York. One-way ticket. Now, in my family, to take real responsibility, there's one person you have to talk to before you make any type of move like that. And although she had championed me all these years, my mother had to have a final talk with me. So I called my mother and I said, Mom, guess what? And my mother knows when I'm throwing her a curveball. So she says, I said, I'm moving to New York. She says, to do what? I want to be on Broadway. She says, you want to be on Broadway? She says, I want you to do me a favor, son, because I know you can't tell me why you left corporate America and why you got fired and why you left this job and went. She said, but I want you to go to the yellow pages and then go back to the business section and thumb all the way down to the letter P. And I did. I was listening to her on the phone giving me instructions. And I went all the way down to P, and she said, find the word psychiatrist. I found the word psychiatrist. I said, okay, here it is. She said, call that listing. Call the first one. Set an appointment because you have lost your mind. And yet again, At that moment, I could not tell my mother what it was that was calling me. I couldn't tell my mother that I wanted to go to New York so badly that I had to go. And if I were to come back in a month's time, I would have gone to fulfill that part of me that had to go and audition because that stage was calling me. Well, what eventually happened is a month later, I got the national tour of Jesus Christ Superstar with Ted Neely and Carl Anderson. So I went on tour for six months. And during that time, I tell you, when I got to New York, it was interesting. Because one thing I found on 87th Street between Columbus and Central Park West, I found my freedom. And I went to the corner of 87th Street in Columbus and I said, I'm home! My soul knew that I was home. And in the back of my mind, I always had him. And I said, I'm far away from him. And I'm talking about my daddy. The pain, you see, I thought I could get away from it if I moved away physically. And we were on tour, Jesus Christ Superstar, and we were traveling from Casper, Wyoming to Long Beach, California on a sleeper bus. I'd had 2 hours of sleep, and I thought, I'll get up and talk to the bus driver, have a conversation with him. He's whizzing down the freeway. And we're talking, and all of a sudden something whizzes by the bus. And I'm like, catch up with it, catch up with it. What was that? What was that? I need to find out what that was. And he looks at me and he says, I think it was a tumbleweed, but I'm not sure. We'll get up and see what it is, though. So we got up, and sure enough, it was a tumbleweed. We continued our conversation, and now something is coming from this periphery, the right periphery, coming towards the bus. And I stop in mid-sentence, and I look, and there it is, the face of my father. A couple of hours later, we stop and get breakfast, and there's two parents and a child. The mother asks the child, what would you like for breakfast? And the child speaks, but I don't hear the child's voice. I hear my father's voice, and I run to the men's room, and I go into a tirade, and I say, I thought I left you in Nashville. I thought I left all of that pain and disappointment that you caused me in Nashville. That followed me to the end of the tour. I was living in Harlem. This was January 1997. And something says, call him. Call him now. And I pick up the phone. And I take a deep breath of courage. My mother answers the phone, and I said, Mommy, is Daddy there? She said, yeah, he's right here. I said, let me speak with him. I knew what the call was about. He answers the phone. And as soon as he speaks, have you ever heard somebody's voice that as soon as they speak, it just brings back so many memories? And he says, hello. And all that courage that I had left me. And I said, Daddy, do you remember when I was little and you used to whisk me away when I wanted you to come out and play ball with me? You never would hold my hand. You never would take me to church. I said, do you remember any of that? Did you think something was wrong with me? Did you think I was crazy or strange? And my father stopped. And he says, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I don't remember any of that. Maybe you have the wrong person. And the voice says, say it. And I said, Daddy, I forgive you. Silence. Well, I was enraged. You cannot talk to me. Do you remember when I was up for honors? You wouldn't come to my banquets. You remember when you told me I was going to end up in juvenile because my friends were bad? I was a straight A student. I was on the national honor roll. Do you remember any of that? And then I heard the voice, say it, say it. And I said, Daddy, I love you. I love you, and I always have, and I always will. And I hung up the phone, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried, and I woke up, and I heard a voice say, "Congratulations." And I said, "Congratulations for what?" "You've just set in motion your sacred covenant." I said, "He did not answer." And the voice said, "It wasn't for him. It was for you." All of the years from that point on, 1997 through 2007, 2009, I would call purposely. And I'd hear my father in the background, and I said, "Mama, could you put Daddy on the phone?" And I said, "Daddy, I hope you had a good day. I love my life here in New York. I'm getting ready to go to the show. I love you." And the response was the same. I finally found out that I could let go of that expectation. If I could just get to the place of knowing that I really loved my daddy, I could let go of the expectation of him saying, "I love you back," because I couldn't know if he ever would, but I could tell him. And so in 2007, my mother calls and she says, "Well, there's trouble here." I said, "Okay." She said, "Your father's been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease." He went to the doctor, and the doctor told him that if he doesn't start dialysis, he won't be here for Christmas. That's 6 months away. I said, "Okay." And she said, "Your father said he guessed he won't be here for Christmas." I said, "Oh." She said, "Can you talk to him? Because everybody's talked to him but you." I said, "Sure." And I got on the phone and I said, "Well, Daddy, I understand that you are having some pain and that you've been diagnosed with end-stage renal disease, and the doctor told you that he recommends that you go on dialysis." And he says, I said, "Wow." I said, "And you've chosen not to, so he's told you that your body could toxify to the point of you dying and you won't be here for Christmas, and you've chosen not to go on dialysis, correct?" He says, I said, "Well, I tell you what, we would love for you to stay around a little while longer, but it's your body and it's your life, and we love you, and you've given us so much, and if you decide to say so long, we'll be fine, but it's your choice." My mother calls me back. It's about 10:30. She says, "What did you tell him?" I said, "I told him that it would be good if he went on dialysis because he would be here longer with us and that he could stay a little while longer." She said, "Well, he's staying." I'm glad he did. Those last few years that I had with my father made up for all of those years that we didn't talk. I would sit and listen to my daddy, and he'd say, "I grew up in the South," and my father was about this tall. He was dark, he was thin, and he was very handsome. He said, "I remember this and I remember that, and I went to the World War II. Boy, it was something." And I would hear God say, "Listen, just listen. Listen to what's under the tongue." And my father would chuckle every now and then, but I heard the pain, all of that he experienced. The last 5 days of my father's life, he was in Vanderbilt, the palliative ward. And I remember going, and I would just sit. He was incoherent. And I've always known that there were other realms of conversation. And I would go into meditation, and I remember one day I asked him, I said, "So, Daddy, what was this all about between us?" He said, "Well, we had our own unique way, but it's not uncommon. And you found your way to navigate through it. I knew you would." I couldn't tell you that I loved you like you wanted me to. I couldn't tell you that I was proud of you, that this was my son and I'm just so delighted. I couldn't tell you any of that because nobody ever told me. It was hard for me to open my mouth and get any of that out. But I did. And I saw you. I saw your potential. And I didn't want you to get mixed up with the wrong crowd. So I would say things you're going to end up in juvenile because that's the only thing and the only way that I knew to say it. But I loved you. And I'll always love you. And now I can fly and be with you everywhere you go. Powerful. He says, and you go and teach young men and women who don't have what we had, but who've gone through what we've gone through. And you tell them that there is a way to navigate through all of the pain and disappointment, through all of that stuff, to get to who they really are, like we did. You see, the last time that I saw my father for Thanksgiving was the first time I ever saw him cry. And so there's something in there, as difficult as that was, at every corner of me trying to get my father to say, just say something. I love you, I'm proud of you. I know you're gonna do it. But I had to find it. And it's not easy. And I think sometimes for me, I look at the world and I say, whew, that's a tough one. It keeps circling round and round and round and round. It's like my life. And if I can get this one, then I can be a benefit out there. Because all it's calling for is for somebody to say, I care about you. That's all the world is calling for, really. To say, I love you. But the love is here. It's not out there. We bring it to that place. And so I go back to this young man who's holding on for dear life. Mr. Holt, that's your name. Will you come and see what I did? I go back to that classroom and I look at him and I don't see the young man anymore. I see me. That's me. That's me tugging. And I look at him and I say, absolutely. What have you created? Because I want to see it. That's what my father was talking about. And anytime I know that we're experiencing someone, that one that we don't want to be around, get away from me, because it's too painful. But once we get under the rock, there's the blessing. That's the blessing. That's beyond forgiveness. And so now I'm in Nashville and I'm ready to go back to New York. I'm ready to go back to the stage. That 5-year-old has summoned me. Come back. Come back to your original self, your authentic self. You never left him. You just had to learn some things in the meantime so you could come back. Let's go into prayer. Let's take a deep breath. Oh. Father, Mother God, divine presence, all that there is. How wonderful and good and marvelous it is to bask in your presence. Just to be in the presence. Just to say, I'm grateful. I'm so thankful for all that has come, because it has given me an opportunity to say, yes, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's painful, even when it doesn't feel right. I say yes. I say yes, and inside the yes is every single thing that I need. Every single thing that I am and have come here to reveal and demonstrate is inside the yes, and I give myself permission to be all that I am, nevertheless being better and unfolding to my greater yet to be, right here and right now. And I give great thanks for those who have come into my path to make me aware that I can be better, that I can be happier, that I can be full of love, filled with joy, full with compassion, and abounding in love. I'm so grateful for this time that we have together. I speak this for myself, and I speak this for everyone in the room, that something is calling us to let it go. Let go. Cross the threshold and be more, reveal more, give more, share more than you've ever given before. And it's right here for us, right here and right now. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I let this be. I set it free as I am free. And I say amen, and so it is. Thank you
for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.